The distress signal had been repeating for 3 cycles before anyone at Frontier Station Kepler 442 bothered to decode it. In the vast emptiness of the Andromeda Traverse, where most signals were either cosmic radiation or the dying screams of failed colony ships, cynicism had become standard protocol. But when Junior Communications Officer Maya Chen ran the frequency through the tertiary filters, her blood turned to ice. The signal wasn't broadcasting in any of the 73 known galactic languages. It was transmitting in Mandarin, English, and binary code, a combination only used by Earth's deep space exploration vessels, ships that hadn't been seen in this sector for nearly 2 decades. Maya's fingers trembled as she routed the signal to Commander James Herrick's quarters, not caring that station time read 0347 hours. The commander was a mountain of a man, a veteran of the Proxima conflicts who'd seen more combat than most soldiers saw in 3 lifetimes. When he arrived at the communications bay 4 minutes later, still fastening his uniform jacket, his steel-gray eyes were already sharp with focus. He didn't need to ask why she'd woken him. The moment he saw the language matrix on her screen, his jaw tightened with recognition. "That's the Prometheus," he said quietly, his voice carrying the weight of ghosts. "She went missing 17 years ago during the first contact expedition to the Veiled Reaches." He leaned closer to the display, watching the signal pattern pulse like a desperate heartbeat. 300 souls on board. Scientists, diplomats, families. The council declared them lost with all hands after 2 years of searching. Maya pulled up the signal's origin point, and both of them stared at the coordinates in disbelief. The transmission was coming from deep within the Shadowmark Nebula, a region of space so dense with electromagnetic interference and gravitational anomalies that it was considered a navigation dead zone. No ship had ever successfully traversed its core and returned. The nebula was a tomb, a beautiful swirling mass of purple and crimson gases that devoured anything foolish enough to enter its embrace. And yet, somehow, a human vessel had been transmitting from its heart for who knew how long. "We need to report this to the Galactic Council immediately," Maya said, already reaching for the priority channel controls. Herrick's hand caught her wrist, gentle but firm. She looked up at him, confused by the conflict she saw playing across his weathered features. "If we report this through official channels, it'll take the Council 6 weeks just to convene a committee," Herrick said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Then another 3 months to approve a rescue expedition, and that's if they approve it at all. The Veiled Reaches are contested territory now. The Jatheri Dominion claims salvage rights to anything found in the Shadowmark. By the time politicians finish arguing, everyone on that ship will be long dead." He released her wrist and met her eyes with an intensity that made her catch her breath. "If they're not already." The implications hung in the air between them. What Herrick was suggesting bordered on treason. Frontier stations didn't have the authority to mount rescue operations without council approval, especially not into regions claimed by powers as volatile as the Jatheri. The insectoid race had been itching for an excuse to demonstrate their military superiority ever since humanity had brokered peace in the Outer Rim disputes. An unauthorized human vessel entering their territory would be considered an act of aggression, possibly even an invitation to war. But Maya had grown up on stories of the Prometheus, had studied its mission in academy classes on first contact protocols. Her own aunt had been part of the medical team on that ship. Aunt Sarah, who used to send video messages full of wonder about the cosmos, about the incredible diversity of life they were discovering, about humanity's bright future among the stars. Those messages had stopped coming 17 years ago, when Maya was only 7 years old. The possibility that survivors might still be out there, abandoned by the very government that had sent them on their mission, ignited something fierce in her chest. "What would we need?" she asked, and saw approval flash in Herrick's eyes. The commander moved to the tactical display and pulled up a 3-dimensional map of the sector. The Shadowmark Nebula rotated slowly in the holographic projection, its beauty masking lethal danger. "Something small, fast, and expendable," he said, his fingers dancing across the controls to highlight potential approach vectors. The station has a modified Hawk-class scout ship in Bay 7. She's technically decommissioned, but I've kept her flight ready for contingencies. He glanced at Maya with the ghost of a smile. The official logs will show she was destroyed in a docking accident. Tragic loss of equipment, no casualties. And crew? Maya asked, though she already knew she'd volunteered herself the moment she'd decoded that signal. Small. 3 at most. Any more would draw attention. Herrick expanded the view to show the route they'd need to take. We'll need a pilot who knows how to navigate hazard zones, someone with military combat experience for security, and a communications specialist to maintain contact with the Prometheus signal. He looked at her directly. That last one would be you, if you're willing to risk court-martial and possibly your life. Maya didn't hesitate. I'm in. Good. Herrick began pulling up personnel files. For pilot, there's only one person crazy enough and skilled enough to thread a needle through the shadow mark. He opened a file that made Maya's eyes widen. Kai Vance. Everyone in the Traverse knew about Kai Vance. Half legend, half cautionary tale, he was a freelance pilot who'd made his reputation running blockades during the Proxima conflicts and somehow surviving encounters that should have killed him a dozen times over. He was also infamous for his complete disregard for authority, his sarcastic attitude, and his mysterious past. Rumor said he'd once been an elite pilot for Earth's naval forces before something had gone catastrophically wrong. Now he took contracts from the fringes, asking no questions as long as the payment was good. Vance is at the station? Maya asked, surprised. Pilots like him rarely docked at official installations. Arrived 6 hours ago for repairs and resupply, Herrick confirmed. His ship took damage from pirates near the Belian corridor. He's been complaining about our mechanics working too slowly. The commander's expression turned calculating. I think he'd appreciate a job that gets him off station with compensation for his troubles. 20 minutes later, Maya found herself following Herrick through the dimly lit corridors of the station's commercial sector, heading toward the dive bar euphemistically called the Gravity Well. It was the kind of establishment where questions weren't asked and memories were drowned in synthetic alcohol and alien spirits. The air inside was thick with a dozen different atmospheric preferences, creating a hazy fog that smelled of ozone and exotic spices. Beings from across the galaxy clustered around tables and in dark corners, conducting business both legal and otherwise. Kai Vance sat alone at the bar, and Maya's first thought was that he looked nothing like his reputation. He was younger than she'd expected, perhaps in his early 30s, with dark hair that fell across his forehead and sharp features that might have been handsome if not for the world-weary exhaustion in his eyes. Those eyes were an unusual shade of amber, watching the liquor in his glass with an intensity that suggested he was seeing something far more distant than alcohol. He wore a battered flight jacket over dark cargo pants, and even sitting casually, there was a coiled readiness to him that spoke of ingrained combat training. He didn't look up as they approached, but Maya saw his posture shift almost imperceptibly, aware of their presence. Commander Herrick, he said, his voice smooth with a hint of an accent Maya couldn't quite place. If you're here to tell me your mechanics found more problems with the Revenant, I'm not interested in hearing it. The NAV computer was fine before your people got their hands on it. Your ship is fine, Vance, Herrick said, sliding onto the stool next to him. Maya remained standing, studying the pilot with curiosity. I'm here with a job offer. Now Kai did look up, and Maya felt the impact of his gaze as it flicked between her and Herrick. Intelligence burned in those amber eyes, along with suspicion and something that might have been dark amusement. A job offer from a station commander usually means it's something illegal, impossible, or suicidal. Sometimes all three. He took a measured sip of his drink. I'm listening. Herrick laid out the situation in low tones, explaining about the Prometheus signal and the location. With each detail, Maya watched Kai's expression shift from skepticism to interest to what looked like actual shock when Herrick mentioned the Shadowmark Nebula. The pilot set down his glass carefully, as if suddenly aware his hands needed to be steady. The shadow mark, he repeated flatly. You want me to fly into the shadow mark nebula? The place where ships go to become expanding clouds of debris. He laughed, but there was no humor in it. What's the pay? 30,000 credits, Herrick said. Plus salvage rights to any non-essential cargo we recover from the Prometheus. Kai's eyebrows rose. Generous. Which means you're desperate and you know the odds of survival are terrible. He drummed his fingers on the bar, a rapid pattern that suggested intense calculation. Make it 50,000 in guaranteed repairs for the Revenant regardless of outcome, and I'll do it. Done, Herrick agreed without hesitation, which made Kai's eyes narrow with renewed suspicion. That was too easy. There's something you're not telling me. The pilot's gaze shifted to Maya, assessing her with uncomfortable accuracy. Communications specialist, right? Young, idealistic, probably has a personal connection to the Prometheus. He looked back at Herrick. And you're the noble commander willing to risk everything for the chance to save people everyone else wrote off as dead. This isn't about money or glory. This is about ghosts. Maya felt heat rise to her cheeks, angry at being read so easily. Does it matter? People might be alive out there. Humans. Doesn't that mean anything to you? Something flickered across Kai's face, there and gone too quickly to identify. It means I know exactly what kind of desperation drives people to attempt the impossible. He stood, and Maya realized he was taller than she'd thought, lean and built for speed rather than strength. Fine. We leave in 4 hours. That gives me time to recalibrate the Revenant's shields and load emergency supplies. But I want it on record that I think this is a monumentally terrible idea and we're probably all going to die screaming in the void. Noted, Herrick said dryly. Bay 7, 0800 hours. Don't be late. As they turned to leave, Kai's voice stopped them. Commander? The shadow mark isn't just dangerous because of the navigation hazards. There are stories about that place. Ships that went in and came out, changed. Crews that encountered things we don't have names for. His expression was deadly serious. Whatever we find out there, it won't be what we're expecting. Are you prepared for that? Herrick met his gaze steadily. I've learned to be prepared for anything. Then you're either very wise or very foolish, Kai replied. I suppose we'll find out which. The next 4 hours passed in a blur of covert preparation. Maya packed essential equipment while Herrick quietly requisitioned supplies under false manifest codes, redirecting resources in ways that would take the station's administrators weeks to notice. She found herself in her quarters at 0630, staring at the small collection of personal items she was allowed to bring. Her hand hesitated over a photo cube displaying images of her family, including the last picture of Aunt Sarah before the Prometheus departed. In it, her aunt was smiling with unrestrained excitement, eyes bright with dreams of discovery. I'm coming, Maya whispered to the image. If you're out there, I'm coming. Bay 7 was a forgotten corner of the station, usually reserved for decommissioned or mothballed vessels. The Hawk-class scout ship Herrick had mentioned sat in the docking cradle looking every bit as expendable as he'd suggested. But as Maya drew closer, she noticed the ship had been recently modified. The hull plating was reinforced, the engine housing showed signs of custom work, and the sensor array was far more sophisticated than standard Hawk-class configuration. This wasn't just some backup vessel, Herrick had been preparing for something like this for a long time. Kai Vance was already there, running external diagnostics with the efficiency of someone who'd performed the task thousands of times. His ship, the Revenant, sat in the adjacent berth, and Maya couldn't help but admire its lines. It was a beautiful vessel, clearly custom-built, with a sleek profile that suggested incredible speed and maneuverability. No wonder he had such a fearsome reputation as a pilot. She's called the Drake, Herrick said, appearing beside Maya and making her jump. He smiled apologetically. Not elegant, but she's tough and she's smart. I've personally overseen every modification. She'll get us through the shadow mark, or nothing will. Optimistic, Kai called from where he was working. I like it. Better than she'll probably disintegrate, but let's hope for the best. Herrick ignored the sarcasm and began loading supplies into the Drake's cargo hold. Maya joined him, falling into the familiar rhythm of pre-flight preparation. As she worked, she became aware of being watched. She looked up to find Kai studying her with an expression that wasn't quite hostile but definitely wasn't friendly. "You know there's a good chance your aunt is dead, right?" he said bluntly. 17 years is a long time. Life support fails, food runs out, radiation exposure, hostile aliens, spatial anomalies. 1,000 things could have killed everyone on that ship long before now. Maya straightened, meeting his gaze. "Then we'll bring back their remains so their families can have closure. Either way, they deserve better than to be forgotten in the dark." Something in Kai's expression softened fractionally. "Fair enough." He returned to his work, but added more quietly, "I hope you find what you're looking for out there." "I really do." By 0800 hours, they were ready. Herrick had changed into non-military attire, leaving his commander's insignia in his locked quarters along with a sealed message to be delivered to station administration if they didn't return within 2 weeks. Maya had double-checked all communications equipment, ensuring they could maintain contact with the Prometheus signal even through the Shadowmark's interference. Kai had run through every system on the Drake twice, his fingers flying over controls with practiced ease. As they strapped into their positions, Kai at the helm, Herrick in the tactical seat, Maya at communications, the weight of what they were about to attempt settled over them like a physical presence. They were 3 people in a small ship, about to venture into one of the most dangerous regions of known space, chasing a signal that might be nothing more than an automated system broadcasting to empty corridors and dead crew. "Last chance to back out," Kai said, his hands already initiating the departure sequence. "No judgment." "Well, maybe a little judgment, but I'd understand." "Just fly the ship, Vance," Herrick said, but there was warmth in his gruff tone. "Your funeral," Kai replied, and coaxed the Drake out of its berth with a gentleness that spoke of true expertise. As the station fell away behind them and the vast darkness of space opened up ahead, Maya pulled up the Prometheus signal on her display. It pulsed steadily, a beacon calling them into the unknown. Somewhere beyond the Shadowmark's swirling gases and lethal anomalies, humans might be waiting for rescue. Or they might be flying toward nothing but ghosts and empty corridors. But as the Drake's engines hummed to full power and Kai set their course toward the Shadowmark Nebula, Maya felt something she hadn't experienced in years: hope. Not the naive optimism of childhood, but the fierce, determined hope of someone willing to risk everything for the possibility of saving lives. The nebula loomed ahead of them, beautiful and terrible, its purple and crimson gases swirling in patterns that hurt to watch for too long. And somewhere in its heart, a mystery awaited, one that would test everything they thought they knew about survival, sacrifice, and what it truly meant to be human in a galaxy that often seemed designed to crush human spirit. Their journey into the void had begun. The Shadowmark Nebula was even more terrifying up close than any simulation had prepared them for. Kai's hands moved across the controls with unwavering precision as the Drake slipped into the outer layers of roiling gas, where visibility dropped to nearly nothing and sensor readings became unreliable at best. Maya watched her displays flicker and distort, electromagnetic interference creating ghost signals that appeared and vanished like phantoms. Beside her, Herrick monitored tactical systems with the calm focus of a man who'd faced death enough times to be on familiar terms with it. "Radiation levels are climbing," Maya reported, her voice steady despite the anxiety coiling in her stomach. "Still within acceptable parameters, but we're only at the periphery. The Prometheus signal is coming from at least 40,000 kilometers deeper." Kai made a sound that might have been amusement or resignation. 40,000 kilometers through the soup. "Wonderful. Everyone make sure your radiation meds are current, because we're about to get a dose that'll make your DNA do interesting things." He adjusted their trajectory as a massive gas formation loomed ahead, steering the Drake through a gap that seemed impossibly narrow. The ship shuddered but held steady, responding to his commands like an extension of his own body. Maya found herself mesmerized by the way he flew. There was no wasted movement, no hesitation. Every adjustment was exactly what was needed, nothing more or less. She'd known skilled pilots before, but watching Kai navigate the shadowmark was like watching an artist work. He seemed to anticipate the nebula's movements before they happened, reading patterns in chaos that should have been unreadable. "You've done this before," she said suddenly, the realization hitting her. "You've been in the shadowmark." Kai's jaw tightened, and for a long moment she thought he wouldn't answer. Then he said quietly, "Once. 5 years ago. A salvage operation that went wrong in every possible way. I was the only one who made it out." His amber eyes never left the view screen. "Swore I'd never come back. Funny how the universe has a sense of humor about these things." Before Maya could respond, the ship lurched violently. Alarms shrieked as something massive appeared on their sensors, a gravitational anomaly that hadn't been their seconds before. Kai swore and threw the Drake into a steep dive, the inertial dampeners screaming in protest as they pulled multiple Gs. Maya's stomach lurched into her throat as the view screen filled with a swirling vortex of compressed spacetime, a micro-singularity that devoured light itself. "Hold on!" Kai shouted, though they were already strapped in. His fingers flew across the controls, redirecting power from non-essential systems directly to the engines. The Drake shuddered like a living thing, fighting against the immense gravitational pull trying to drag them into oblivion. Herrick was already moving, his combat reflexes kicking in. Diverting auxiliary power to forward shields. "Vance, I need 30 degrees starboard, now." "Working on it." Kai gritted out, veins standing out on his neck from the effort of controlling the ship. The engines whined at dangerous levels, heat warnings flashing across every display. For a terrifying moment, Maya was certain they wouldn't make it, that they'd be crushed into atomic particles or stretched across the event horizon of that impossible singularity. Then Kai did something that defied every piloting manual ever written. Instead of fighting the gravitational pull, he angled into it, using the singularity's own force to slingshot them around its edge. The Drake accelerated to speeds that made the hull groan and the shields flare brilliant white, but Kai's calculations were perfect. They whipped around the anomaly and shot free on the other side, leaving it behind so quickly that Maya's inner ear took several seconds to catch up with the maneuver. "You're completely insane," Herrick said, but there was respect in his voice. "Brilliant, but insane." Kai's hands were shaking slightly as he stabilized their course. "Yeah, well, sanity is overrated in this line of work." He pulled up the navigation display and frowned. "The good news is that little detour actually put us closer to the Prometheus signal. The bad news is we're now in an area of the nebula that's even more unstable than where we started." Maya checked her communications array, surprised to find the Prometheus signal was now coming through with unusual clarity. "I'm getting more than just a distress beacon now," she said, her excitement building. There's active power generation on that ship. Life support systems are online. Oxygen recyclers, water filtration, even some kind of energy signature that looks like residential habitation modules." She looked up at them, hardly daring to believe it. Someone could actually be alive over there. The implications settled over them like a physical weight. 17 years was an impossibly long time to survive in deep space, especially in a region as hostile as the Shadowmark. Ships carried supplies for extended missions, but not nearly that extended. Unless the crew had found a way to generate sustainable resources, they should have run out of everything necessary for survival years ago. How is that possible? Maya wondered aloud. Even with rationing and the most efficient recycling systems, they should have exhausted their supplies a decade ago. Herrick leaned forward, studying the data with a tactical analyst's eye. Unless they found something out here. A resource, a technology, or... He paused, his expression troubled, or someone found them. Kai shot him a sharp look. "You think they made contact? With what?" "There are no known inhabited systems in the Shadowmark. The Ja theory won't even send probes into this region. I think," Herrick said slowly, "that the Prometheus was a first contact vessel, and they may have succeeded in their mission in ways we never anticipated. The question is whether that contact was beneficial or if they're being kept alive for purposes we can't yet understand." A chill ran down Maya's spine at the thought. She'd studied enough xenobiology and first contact protocols to know that alien motivations could be utterly incomprehensible to human minds. A species that kept humans alive might be doing so out of compassion, scientific curiosity, or something far darker. The galaxy was vast and filled with wonders, but it also contained horrors that defied imagination. The Drake pressed deeper into the nebula, and Maya found herself gripping her console as they navigated through increasingly hazardous conditions. Plasma storms erupted around them, great sheets of ionized gas that lit up the darkness with violent beauty. Kai threaded between them with hair-raising precision, sometimes missing collision by meters. Through it all, the Prometheus signal grew stronger, pulling them forward like a lighthouse calling ships to shore, though whether to salvation or destruction remained unclear. Contact, Herrick announced suddenly. Visual range. Putting it on screen. The main view screen flickered, and through the swirling gases of the shadowmark, a shape emerged. Maya's breath caught in her throat. The Prometheus hung suspended in space like a sleeping giant, its massive hull scarred but intact. The Earth vessel was old-style construction, built during the early days of deep space exploration when ships were designed with redundancy and durability over elegance. But what made Maya lean forward in shock was what surrounded it. The ship sat at the center of what could only be described as a bubble of clear space, a perfect sphere of calm within the shadowmark's chaos. And covering portions of the Prometheus's hull was something organic-looking, a crystalline growth that pulsed with soft bioluminescent light. The structures were beautiful in an alien way, branching patterns that resembled both coral reefs and neural networks, glowing in colors that shifted between blue, green, and violet. What in the name of? Kai breathed, his usual sarcasm completely absent. Are those things growing on the ship? Maya's fingers flew across her console, scanning the anomalous structures. They're organic, but not carbon-based. Silicon crystalline hybrid, I think. They're generating massive amounts of energy, and... Her eyes widened as the data resolved, they're feeding that energy directly into the Prometheus's power grid. Those structures are keeping the ship alive. It's a symbiotic relationship, Herrick said, understanding dawning in his voice. The ship provides structure and possibly something else the organisms need, and they provide power in return. Incredible. Kai brought the Drake in slowly, approaching the bubble of calm space with understandable caution. As they crossed the threshold, the ship's systems immediately stabilized. The electromagnetic interference vanished, sensors became crystal clear, and the violent shaking from navigating the nebula ceased entirely. It was like entering the eye of a hurricane, a pocket of perfect peace in the midst of chaos. Reading multiple life signs aboard the Prometheus, Maya reported, her voice trembling with emotion. At least 47 humans, possibly more in shielded sections I can't scan. They're clustered primarily in the residential modules in what looks like a central gathering area. Tears pricked at her eyes. They're alive. They're actually alive. Kai maneuvered the Drake toward the Prometheus's docking port, his expression unreadable. Let's not celebrate until we know what condition they're in. 17 years in this place could have done things to them. Psychological trauma, radiation damage, who knows what exposure to those crystalline organisms might cause. He was right, but Maya couldn't suppress the hope blooming in her chest. As the docking clamps engaged with a solid thunk, she was already out of her seat, grabbing the emergency medical kit and portable scanner. Herrick armed himself with a plasma pistol, not overtly threatening but clearly prepared for anything. Kai sealed the Drake's systems and joined them at the airlock, his own weapon holstered but accessible. Standard first contact protocols, Herrick said, his command voice firm. We don't know what we're walking into. Stay alert, stay together, and if anything seems wrong, we retreat immediately back to the ship. Understood? They both nodded. The airlock cycled, and Maya's heart pounded as the door unsealed with a hiss of equalizing pressure. The air that wafted in from the Prometheus was surprisingly fresh, carrying a faint scent that reminded her of ozone and something floral she couldn't identify. Emergency lighting illuminated the corridor beyond, casting everything in a dim reddish glow. They stepped aboard the Prometheus with weapons drawn and senses heightened. The ship was quiet but not silent. Maya could hear the hum of active systems, the whisper of air circulation, and something else. Music. Someone was playing music deeper in the ship, a haunting melody that echoed through the empty corridors. "This way," Maya said, following her scanner's readings toward the concentrated life signs. They moved through the ship carefully, noting details that painted a picture of long habitation. The walls were clean but showed years of wear. Hydroponic gardens had been established in what were once storage bays, green plants thriving under artificial lighting. Artwork decorated the corridors, paintings and sculptures clearly created during the years of isolation. As they rounded a corner, they encountered the first person. She was a woman in her 60s, wearing clothes that were well-maintained but clearly handmade, her silver hair braided down her back. She looked up from the tablet she'd been reading and smiled at them with absolutely no surprise, as if visitors from the outside universe arrived every day. "Welcome," she said warmly. "We've been expecting you. The Guardians told us you were coming." Maya exchanged glances with Kai and Herrick, uncertainty flooding through her. "The Guardians?" she asked carefully. The woman's smile deepened. "The crystalline beings that saved us. They don't communicate in words, but in feelings, in visions. They told us humans would come, that the time of isolation was ending." She gestured down the corridor. "Come. The others will want to meet you. And Dr. Sarachan especially," she said her niece would be among those who came for us. Maya's legs nearly gave out. "Aunt Sarah is alive?" "Very much so," the woman confirmed. "She's our chief medical officer and one of the Council of Elders. This way, please." They followed her through the ship, past more crew members who watched them with curiosity but no fear. Everyone they saw appeared healthy, if somewhat adapted to their isolated existence. Children played in common areas, children who must have been born on this ship, who'd never known Earth or any world beyond the Prometheus's hull. The sight was both wonderful and heartbreaking. The woman led them to a large chamber that had once been a cargo bay but now served as a community center. Hundreds of people gathered there, and at the front stood a group of older individuals who carried themselves with quiet authority. And there, standing among them, was a woman Maya recognized despite the years and the gray that had replaced her aunt's once dark hair. "Maya," Sarachan breathed, stepping forward with tears streaming down her face. "My God, you're all grown up. You came for us." Maya closed the distance between them and fell into her aunt's embrace, emotion overwhelming her carefully maintained composure. "We thought you were dead," she managed through tears. "Everyone thought you were dead." "We were dead," Sarah said, pulling back to look at her niece's face. "The shadow mark nearly destroyed us. Systems failing, hull breaches, radiation poisoning. We were days from total catastrophic failure when the Guardians found us. They saved us, Maya. They gave us life and safety, and in return, we've learned from them. Amazing things. Impossible things." Herrick stepped forward, his military bearing softening slightly. "Dr. Chen, I'm Commander James Herrick. We've come to bring you home." A murmur ran through the assembled crowd at those words. Sarah's expression became complex, mixing hope with something that looked like regret. "Home," she repeated softly. "Commander, we've been gone for 17 years. We've built lives here, families. Children have been born who've never breathed Earth's air. And the knowledge we've gained from the Guardians." She looked around at her people. "We're not the same humans who left. The question isn't whether you've come to bring us home. The question is whether humanity is ready for what we've become." Before anyone could respond, the ship shuddered. Not violently, but noticeably. Kai's hand went to his weapon as he scanned for threats. "What was that?" One of the younger crew members, a man with distinctive crystalline patterns tattooed or somehow embedded in his skin, spoke up. "The Guardians are excited. They sense your ship, your technology. They're curious about the connection to the outside universe." He smiled, and his eyes reflected light in a way human eyes shouldn't. "Don't worry. They mean no harm. They only want to understand." Maya's scientific mind raced with questions even as unease prickled along her spine. The crew of the Prometheus had clearly been changed by their time here, adapted to their environment in ways that went beyond simply surviving. The crystalline organisms, the Guardians, had saved them, but at what cost? And what would it mean for humanity if they brought this back to Earth? Kai moved closer to Maya, his voice low. "I don't like this. Something feels wrong. These people are too calm, too accepting. And those crystalline patterns on that guy's skin? That's not natural integration. That's modification." Herrick was thinking along the same lines. "Dr. Chen, we need to discuss extraction protocols and what you'll need to safely transport your people back to Council space. But I also need full disclosure about what's happened here. The biological modifications, the relationship with these Guardians, everything." Sarah nodded gravely. "Of course, Commander. But first, you need to meet them. Really meet them. Words alone can't convey what the Guardians are, what they've shown us about the universe and humanity's place in it." She extended her hand toward Maya. "Will you trust me? Like you did when you were a little girl?" Maya looked at her aunt's familiar face, seeing both the woman she remembered and a stranger transformed by impossible experiences. Behind Sarah, the crew of the Prometheus watched with expressions that ranged from hopeful to anxious. These were her people, humans who'd survived against inconceivable odds. But they were also something new, changed in ways she didn't yet understand. She felt Kai's presence beside her, solid and real, an anchor to the universe she knew. Herrick stood ready, prepared to defend them against any threat. And her aunt waited with outstretched hand, offering revelations that might change everything humanity thought it knew about its place among the stars. Maya took a deep breath and made her choice. She grasped her aunt's hand. "Show me." As Sarah led them deeper into the Prometheus, toward the heart of the ship where the greatest concentration of crystalline growth pulsed with alien light, Maya felt the weight of discovery settling over her shoulders. They'd come seeking survivors and found something far more profound, evidence that humanity could not only survive in the harshest environments but could form bonds with life forms so alien they defied categorization. Whatever happened next would reshape humanity's understanding of itself and its future among the stars. And as the crystalline structures began to glow brighter, responding to their approach with what felt almost like anticipation, Maya realized that their rescue mission had transformed into something far greater. They hadn't just found the lost crew of the Prometheus. They'd found humanity's next evolution, waiting in the darkness between stars, ready to emerge and show the galaxy what humans could truly become. The real journey was only beginning.